Teachers, what was the best, smartest response from a student you've heard? Story 1. Not a teacher, but this happened in our upper level French class where you can only speak French. If you speak English, the teacher scolds you in French. My friend walked in a few minutes late for a quiz and wasn't allowed to take it. My friend looked at the teacher and said, in English, "That's bullcrap." The teacher looked back angrily and said, also in English, "What did you just say?" My friend, "En français, monsieur." He got kicked out of the class. In French class, we had one guy say to his friend, "Oh, you bastard," right as the teacher walked in front of them and the whole class got quiet. We thought they were in for it. Instead, she goes, "En français, c'est bâtard." Story 2. I've told this story on Reddit before, but this really shy kid that doesn't really speak much was getting picked on by his mean girl when the teacher tells her, "Be nice to him, he might be your boss someday." Without missing a beat, he replies, "No thanks, I don't want to be a pimp when I grow up." Damn. Story 3. A kid in my math class would sleep on his desk. One day the teacher called him to answer a problem on the chalkboard. He woke up, solved the problem on the board with zero difficulty, and just went back to sleep. The teacher repeated the same thing a few times with similar results, and then just let him sleep for the rest of the year. Story 4. This is sort of a flip from the question, but there was this awesome history teacher when I had freshman year of high school who was just always in an amazing mood. We'll call him Mr. Smith. One day everyone is sitting in the class waiting for the tardy bell to ring when a kid sneaks a condom onto the door handle. The bell rings and Mr. Smith walks into the room, grabs the door handle to close it, and pulls the condom off of it. Looks at the condom helmet for a split second and stuffs it into his pocket while saying, "Thanks, I'll need this later." I got another flip of the script. One day in chemistry class, this kid sat a couple of rows behind me was drawing things on an orange. Just random doodle crap. A face on one side, that as every kid draws on another. But on one spot he drew a penis, as one would do, and the teacher saw it. Instead of making him put it away to cover it up, he asked, "Why are you drawing a penis on your food? Do you like to eat penises?" No kid has ever turned that red. Story 5. My history teacher would spend half of the class making jokes directed at the students. One student in particular always took the jokes on the chin and never really made any comebacks. Eventually, the teacher called him out and jokingly lectured him about standing up for himself. He ended up his rant with, "You gotta be a man, you gotta be like me." The student replied with, "Well, which one? Do you want me to be a man, or do you want me to be like you?" Story 6. I'm not a teacher, but I had friends in school who was always pretty dramatic. She actually did have IBS though. So we're in this bitchy teacher's class and she keeps asking to use the bathroom. The teacher says no. My friend's like, "I have IBS though." And the teacher is like, "Tell me what those initials mean and I will let you go." So she screams, "It means I have to crap," and takes off out of the room.
Back when I taught first grade, we were doing a writing assignment about Thanksgiving. The kids had to draw a picture of their family celebrating Thanksgiving and then write about it. One little girl drew the table and chairs, and that was all. I knew she just didn't feel like doing the work, so I tried to prompt her. I asked where the food and her family were, and she snapped right back with, "They're washing the dishes." Had to give her credit for coming up with a logical argument for not doing the work. Not a teacher, but witnessed as a student. There was literally 30 seconds left of class, and my buddy starts to pack up. The teacher didn't seem to mind, but when the bell rang and Buddy got up to leave, the teacher said the classic line, "The bell doesn't dismiss you, I do." And Buddy just continues to leave, gets in the doorway of the class and says, "If it decides when I come, it decides when I leave," and just leaves the class. My grandson, who lives with my wife and I, was sent to office one day for breaking dress code, no belt. The principal asked why he didn't wear it, to which he replied, "My crackhead mother stole it and I didn't have time to get another." Principal got super mad and called us to tell us what happened and what he had said. I confirmed his story. Well, his crack addict mother came to visit last night and we didn't realize it was gone until this morning. I could audibly hear him gasp over the phone and immediately started apologizing, and every time I see him now, he mentions it and apologizes. I had a teacher tell a classmate, "No drinks in class." He got up from his seat, picked up the teacher's drink, and deposited it in the garbage with his drink. She sent him to the office. This was while working with 9-year-olds. We're doing number problems and a kid is having trouble with a sum. The sum is you have 40 sweets. You give half your sweets to your friend. How many sweets do you have now? I grab 40 counters and say to the kid, "Here are 40 sweets. If you give me half, how many would you have left?" Kid turns to me and utterly deadpan says, "I can't give you the sweets. You aren't my friend." Tangentially related. Smart-ass response from teacher on behalf of the student. Had a student that came back a couple of weeks out of class. Counselor let the teachers know that his father had passed and he was having a rough time. I pulled him aside after class one day, told him not to worry about any of the work he missed, focus on getting caught up in your other classes, I'll make things work here. I was his 10th grade English teacher. We had already taken the end of the year exam. As far as the state was concerned, he was done. And that was good enough for me. Kid was straight A's until his dad passed. Cut to a few weeks later, I'm called into counselor's office for a meeting with the student's other teachers. I double check and he's been doing great in class. And work I've assigned has been turned in on time, even though I told him he didn't have to. So I have no idea what's going on. Come to find out, his other teachers weren't as lenient on the makeup work as I was. He had gotten behind in all his other classes and had stayed behind. Now he was in a danger of failing everything but my class. He'd have to repeat the year for English. Counselor asks me what I did to help the student. Oh well, I told him not to worry about anything he missed, and that as far as I was concerned, he was already caught up and he could do his best in class going forward. One of the other teachers balked. I don't see why he needed Mr. Hex Dragon's input. He just let the kid skip out on work. That's not helpful. I replied, "The kid's dad just effing died. You really think the last 6 weeks worth of history matters to him in the slightest?" The counselor smiled and pointed at me. I invited Mr. Hex Dragon because I knew he would say some things I'm not allowed to say. Had my class of working class kids at an art gallery. As we waited for our tour to begin, we played on the small playground near the door. A prep school kid in a uniform approached 2 of my boys and said, "I bet I'm smarter than you are." I watched to make sure no blood was drawn. My students can hold their own pretty much anywhere, and they don't accept insults casually. But they were cool. "No, you're not. Are you in grade 2? The boy said he was, and one of my boys said, "So we're all grade 2 smart." He went back to climbing the monkey bars. But the prep school kid continued, "I know I'm smarter. Let's do some math and I'll prove it." The toughest kid in my room looked this guy square in the eye and said, "Well, I'm smart enough not to do math when I'm having fun on a playground." In high school, our functions and relations teacher would always start to say something, forget it, and say, "I lost my train of thought." Well, one day a buddy of mine replies, "It's okay, sir. There were no important passengers on board." Student A says to student B, "Dude, shut the F up." Staff says, "Student A, we don't talk that way. In the future, find a more appropriate way of expressing yourself." Student A says to staff, "Oh, sorry," then turns to student B and says, "Dude, would you please shut the F up?" Well, this one was during coaching classes for entrance exams. The maths teacher reduced a given problem to a simpler form and challenged the students. So this expression doesn't fit any of the given standard forms for us to find a particular integral. So what do you propose we do? A kid from the back shouted, "The next question." Not a teacher, but witnessed as student. We had a substitute who was leafing through the yearbook and got to the senior superlatives. Our school mascot was the Eagles. She started reading some, if then aloud, and said, "Oh, that's nice. Sarah most school-spirited." A student answered back, "Yeah, because she's always spread eagle." The substitute couldn't keep from laughing, as much as she tried not to. Let me point out that I'm female, since people will assume I'm a guy. I taught in an inner-city school. We were talking about prime numbers, so I would have kids give me a number, and we'd work out if the number was a prime number on the board. One kid wasn't paying attention due to me being a young teacher. I thought I'd catch him off guard and call on him. It went something along the lines of, "Mark, do you have a number?" "Huh? I need your number." "Crap, play it cool, girl. We can talk after class." The whole room lost their crap and I turned red from embarrassment. They then laughed at how red I got. In a high school physics class, we were learning about friction and what varies how strong it is. So the teacher asks, "So as an engineer, What would be some of the hard parts of designing, say, racing tires? Some kid in the back says, getting out of bed in the morning. Spanish class in high school. Two guys who grew up in Spanish-speaking families were goofing off at the back of the class. One guy says that he could stand the weight of another person standing on his stomach, and the other guy, who was probably just shy of 200 pounds, doesn't believe him. So the first guy gets on the ground in the back of the class, and the other guy gets up and stands on his stomach. The teacher sees this and immediately yelled at the guy on the ground to get back into his seat. Without missing a beat, he says, "I can't, he's standing on me." The other guy doesn't move because he wasn't yelled at. Meanwhile, the teacher continues to be upset that the guy on the ground isn't listening to her. I witnessed a rather sad one. In my chemistry class sophomore year, one of my friends was going through some family issues, and his dad just left for a year or so. The kid was acting up in class and the teacher was like, "Do you want me to call your dad?" And he was like, "If he picks up, tell him to come home soon." I'm not a teacher, but this happened in one of my classes a few weeks back. My math teacher is a pretty chill guy and likes to share personal info every now and then, so he decides to tell the class he's getting married this summer break. Most of the class congratulates him and wishes him well. This one girl from the front of the class shouts out, "It has been legal for a year now. Why did you wait this long?" The whole class starts effing dying laughing, and the teacher is just sitting there with his mouth open. A kid mocked me when I said, "Don't do that." I started to yell at him and he said, "No man, that's a song." He then spontaneously came up with a rap song called "Don't Do That," and his friends started making beats. I was no longer mad. My friend Brian was in his homeroom class back in school. The topic of abortion came up as everyone was asking each other if and why they're either against or pro-abortion. We're in Texas, so you can assume the ideas and opinions of the majority of the class. So my friend is a very intelligent and quiet fellow, minding his own business in a corner of the room. The class turns to him to get his opinion on the matter. Someone, "Brian, you've been quiet over there. So what about you? Are you pro-abortion?" Brian, "Well, I wouldn't say I'm pro, but I'm pretty good with a coat hanger." Jaws drop, the room is silent as everyone is registering what just happened. Glad I made it to school that day. Just yesterday, actually. One of my classes is fun in that we give each other hard times, but all in good fun and accomplish a lot. A girl starts giggling uncontrollably for no reason, and she's a bit of an airhead, so I asked her if she saw something shiny and if that entertained her. Another boy jumps in and says, "Yeah, mister, your head." I'm going bald. I wanted to pretend to be mad, but it was just too damn funny. I went to a Catholic school, very strict, lots of beatings. Two friends and I had been caught by one of the more violent teachers, Mr. Murphy, off the school grounds climbing in the neighboring estate's trees. After school detention, we're lined up in his office, where he's screaming at us for our bad behavior, letting the school down, etc. We were expecting a beating or 500 word essay if we are lucky, or perhaps he'll just punch us a bit. He turns to my friend Dave and shouts, "Do you climb in your neighbor's trees at home?" Dave replies, head down and sounding remorseful, "No, sir." "Why not?" "They haven't got any, sir." My other friend literally ended up crying with laughter on the floor. I was shaking with laughter and Dave just stood there head down and motionless. Mr. Murphy stood there, momentarily lost for words before shouting at us to get out. And that was it. Funny thing was, Dave never understood why it was so funny. I have a smart-ass response from a teacher's story to share. In 8th grade science class, we were learning about the planets and the usual class clown, let's call him K, was making the usual immature jokes about Uranus. Our teacher, Mr. P, who was a younger pretty chill guy, wasn't having it, so Mr. P tells K to go outside. When K asks which door he should use to leave, Mr. P first says it doesn't matter, but quickly comes back with an answer and says, "You know what, why don't you go out the back door since you like Uranus so much?" The whole class went crazy, definitely one of the best teacher responses to dumb student comments that I've witnessed.
Thank you so much for watching. If you have stories of your own, feel free to write them in the comments so I can make a video on them in the future. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.